Hello, I'm Nicholas. In this video, I speak with Sarah, and together we talk about stress, anxiety, and social anxiety. We hope you find it informative and helpful.
I remember as a child, I had various skin conditions. And I really clearly remember the doctor saying they were all linked to stress, which I thought was odd at the time because I was only about 5 or 6. So I can't imagine what there was for me to be stressed about. And I don't remember my parents questioning that at all. And I think they might have put it down to me being highly strung. I was definitely a perfectionist. Um, so I think that was the first time that I was aware of stress or anxiety as a concept that was relevant to me. Um, and then, yeah, I think it was sort of more stress than anxiety that I was conscious of. I mean, it's a word that's bandied around a lot when you're a teenager. You know, it's just you're always so stressed about everything. I'm not allowed out this weekend. I'm so stressed. But I think that probably there was an undercurrent of it that was more than that for me. I think, it was more than just that general teenage dissatisfaction with life.
And it's interesting that the word stress was used initially. As stress leads to anxiety, is as we understand it, sort of theoretically anyway. Prolonged stress will cause anxiety, if it's not understood or looked into further. But I think that's often the case with stress, that it can be discounted, maybe seen as a temporary thing. So then a kind of a formal application of social anxiety happened for you when?
Sorry, you broke up a little bit then. Just repeat the question.
So when social anxiety as a term made sense to you, was that because you'd read something, or because a professional pointed it out, or?
No, it wasn't no. I think I just started to read. It was quite recent, really. I think that I've not seen anything that I've experienced as being a thing particularly. But then the more you read, the more you start to think, well, hang on, that makes sense, and that makes sense. So I think I thought that I was just maybe a bit antisocial, or an introvert, or just preferred my own company. And didn't necessarily realize that I was, quite upset at the thought of having to do certain things. I think that I had a real tendency to sort of sweep it under the carpet, and just, head in the sand. It's not a problem. I don't have a problem. So I would say it wasn't until my 30s that I began to actually take notice of what was going through my head at various times, and what that could potentially mean.
Is that one of the things with having something for a long time, is that we don't necessarily think of it as being something that's a problem, but we think that it's the same for everyone. So so that's why I ask, because sometimes it's it can be a particular kind of event, or someone saying something, or it can be a diagnosis. But for you, it's a sort of a dawning realization, and in your 30s it came into sharper focus for you.
Yeah, I think so. I think having children was part of that, because that forced me, I suppose, to engage with people in a different way that I wasn't necessarily comfortable with. And yeah, I don't know
There's a lot of pressure around being a new parent, having children, the school gates, and the NCT groups, and the classes, all that kind of thing. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. And again, with my sort of perfectionist tendencies, I was sort of determined to be amazing at being a mother, and amazing at pregnancy. And I think I put quite a lot of pressure on myself where those things were concerned.
Yes, perfectionism. That's a word you used twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you recognised, or somebody said something about perfection at an early age for you.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, every school report, every teacher, everything. It was always a thing for me.
Hmm. Apparently, we're very good at being what we felt loved for as children. So maybe you felt loved for some perfectionism at some point, and of course it becomes entrenched for us. So yes,
Yeah,
yes.
maybe. Yeah.
So well, what's the most helpful thing anyone has ever said or done for you around anxiety?
I think acceptance has been hugely important. I mean, I think the dialogue around mental health has increased hugely in recent years, maybe partly because of social media. There are just far more people being vocal about their experiences,
Hmm.
and it's no longer seen as, at one time I probably would have known two people who had ever spoken to a counsellor or a therapist, and now virtually everybody has at one point or another. So I think the acceptance around issues has been really helpful. I think finding my own voice has been really helpful, and obviously I'm lucky in that I've got the outlet of writing to do that. But yeah, just people being accepting of it, and not seeing it as a problem. It's just, I'm still the same person. It's still the same package. There's just a slightly different label on the package now. I think
Hmm.
that has been really useful for me.
So it being something that can be talked about, and then being able to talk about it as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And instead of just not feeling like I have to make excuses for how I feel, like rather than saying I've got a migraine or something, just being able to say to somebody, I can't face it. I can't do it. Um, and not having them judge for that. I think that's, and then just when people check in a day, when people give you your space, but then check in a day or two later by something quite non-invasive, like a text message, and just say, just checking up on you, how are you feeling? That just makes you feel supported, but in a way that is not threatening.
Mm. And not not another job to do, that you've got to respond to something. It can sit there until you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm. So what's the one thing you would say to sufferers, do you think?
I would like people to know that you're going to have good days and bad days, and to go easy on yourself in both of those situations. If you have a good day, then that's great, embrace it, but don't expect it of yourself. And if your good day suddenly turns bad, then, as you've said before, make sure you've got a get out, make sure you've got an exit. It's important to not feel trapped. I mean, one of my worst experiences ever, I think, was when I foolishly accepted an invitation to a boat party type thing. And from the moment I got there, I was just crippled with anxiety. And then I was stuck on this boat up and down the Thames for, I mean, awful. I would never accept a boat invitation ever again. Just a bad idea. Um, so I think, yeah, I would like people to know that they can escape if they need to, and just go and recharge and restore. Even if they just need to go and lock themselves in a toilet cubicle for 10 minutes and just decompress, that it's okay to do that.
Mm. So preparation, so to maybe allow ourselves to prepare. Uh,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, 'cause I suppose we can in a way be stuck in a sort of a thought process about whether it's better to pay attention or better to try not to pay attention. But there's almost I guess there's two voices on it in society, isn't there, about whether it's yeah, whether it's good to go with something or to try and fight it. So whether we're colluding with something or whether we're actually working well with something, so
Mm.
it's that constant tension, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, in
But
terms of useful things and not useful things that people say. There is that, like, one of the most unhelpful things that people can say to me personally is, oh, just try not to worry so much, or you know, by thinking about it, you're making it real. You know, you're giving it power by you know, putting energy into it. And I just think that it's not true. I think you need to put energy into it so that you can deal with it.
Because otherwise, the feelings underneath, which we have no control over, are in effect being dismissed. And that's where we need to start, isn't it? The fact that there are those ceilings, and they're going to be there automatically. So how do we look after ourselves with that? That maybe over time those feelings might change. Who knows? But we have to work with what we've got initially.
I think it's important to acknowledge your feelings, whatever they happen to be. It doesn't mean you have to completely give in to them, but I think you at least have to acknowledge them. Even if you then try and fight against them or whatever it is that you happen to do with those feelings, I think they need to be acknowledged.
Yeah, they provide us with really valuable information, and then we can decide what to do. But it's not always that easy to remove ourselves from those feelings in order to have a kind of a conversation with ourselves like that, is it? That because the feelings can be overwhelming at times and powerful. But yeah, as we get used to preparing, maybe as you say, that can manage situations better.
Yeah. I mean, on a non-social level, one of my big triggers tends to be supermarkets. I absolutely hate them. They make me so anxious. I've had more panic attacks than I could count on both hands in supermarkets. But you know, people need to eat. So I would prepare for a trip to the supermarket eventually by finding a podcast that was very sort of soothing or just interesting, something that sort of took me out of myself and drowned out the overstimulation, because that's one of the things I think in a supermarket. They're very stimulating environments. There's banners telling you to buy things, there's the tannoy, there's people, there's all of these sensory inputs that for me are just so just by plugging into something and listening to something else, I was able to sort of block a lot of that out, and it made the whole supermarket experience so much more doable for me. And I think that's an example of preparing for something, you know, just acknowledging that something makes me deeply uncomfortable, but I've got to gird my loins and get on with it, and this is the way of coping with that.
Yes. Something just occurred to me as you were talking about the supermarket. If I can offer it? What occurred to me? Well, it just occurs to me that supermarkets are almost designed, and it's not because I'm a supermarket designer. I did work in retail at one point, but they are designed in a way, yes, to maybe tap into perfectionism, because they offer so much stuff. They don't want people to be perfect in a supermarket. They just want them to buy everything. So I was thinking about that there's the stimulation from the environment itself, but then there's those 54,000 products and the potential to go to a supermarket and come out having missed something somehow.
Yeah.
They're really pressured environments from that point of view. Anyway, that just occurred to me. But
yeah, no, it's true. That is true.
So
is it the right one? Am I making the right choice? Is this a bargain? Am I nutritionally, you know, is my trolley nutritionally balanced? Are people judging my trolley?
Is my list a good sort of list, because I've only got 10 things on it and yet there's 50,000 products here to choose from?
Yeah.
And then all the varieties, the gluten-free and the yeast-free and the sugar-free and the all of that. Yeah. maybe your supermarket is your arch nemesis.
It definitely is. I knew I'd hit a particular low one day when I was standing in a supermarket and just absolutely dripping sweat, holding onto the trolley because I thought I was going to pass out otherwise. And this little old lady
Mm.
who just looked so frail by the side of me.
Mm.
And she came over and she said, "Are you all right, dear? You don't look well." And I thought, oh, this is a new low. I'm being asked by somebody who looks as light as a feather whether I'm okay. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to leave. And I just left the trolley and walked out. It was very sweet of her, but I was really conscious that day that, you know, that things were not good.
Mm.
If this lovely little old lady was coming over to me and saying, "You okay?" Yeah, it was funny. I was able to see the humour in it later on.
Mm. But do you think it's also related to how you're feeling generally before you go into a supermarket? So sort of tiredness or levels of stress, or how much you've got to do, or
Maybe. I mean, all those things would probably exacerbate the
mm.
situation, but I don't think you know, I could have slept for 20 hours and had,
Mm.
you know, a fantastic day and a really nutritious breakfast and have all the time in the world, and I would still get very triggered by going into a
Mm.
supermarket.
Yeah. And it was okay to leave.
Fine.
Yeah.
It was fine. I mean, some poor person had to go and rescue my trolley and put everything back on the shelf that I'd managed to collect so far, but it was fine. It was fine. No one starved. It was fine.
So you had some thoughts as well, things to discuss.
Yes. So, also talking about unhelpful things that people can say.
Mm.
Um, I think one of the things that I've found quite unhelpful over time has been linked to appearance and this idea that, you know, you don't look like you've got a problem, or oh, but you're so outgoing, or you're so confident, or oh, but you always seem so, or you're always so well dressed. And I just, you know, what, that's irrelevant. And I think that's maybe being eroded slightly these days by the fact that there are many celebrities who are speaking up about their own issues, and clearly, you know, they look the part and yet they have these underlying issues. But for me, that's been, and I remember even a medical professional once when I was at the very lowest ebb with my eating disorder, and I went to a doctor and she said to me, "Well, you're not wasting away, are you?" And I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm not, you know, I wasn't
Mm.
thin enough to
Mm.
be taken seriously. But
Mm.
at the same time, I was very conscious that, you know, my body weight had plummeted, my eating was horribly disordered, and it was the first time I tried to seek help.
Mm.
Um, and to have a medical professional kind of say, "Well, you know, you're not wasting away,"
Mm.
um, it really, that set me back like quite a long way. Um, so I think those sorts of things where mental health are concerned, I think any importance that people put on appearance
Mm.
is really unhelpful.
Mm.
And I'm just curious as to sort of why they do that, because there's no one way that someone should look, is there? I mean, whatever's going on the outside is not always an accurate reflection of what's happening on the inside.
Mm. I suspect it's about the other person's anxiety of finding that they're uncertain how to respond, or nervous. Um, for example, around eating disorders, when it comes to the therapeutic world, then there's quite a lot that's said by some around, oh well, eating disorder is something where somebody can die, so you really need to kind of be very careful about that. And so yes, I've heard therapists get kind of anxious, and also I've heard feedback as well that your experience is not uncommon, that yes, and maybe it is because of uh, that what happens is that people are looked at purely in terms of their weight as a kind of a way of assessing kind of need, but it means that yes, the person gets missed really, and that human response doesn't occur, that empathic connection, which says, oh, that sounds difficult. What's that like? Oh, that sounds hard. Yeah, is that painful?
Yeah.
Yeah, instead, oh, no, you look all right. But yeah.
Other thing that we spoke about briefly was just the sort of fatigue that can come with anxiety. It is obviously very exhausting to feel like that, and just wanted to talk about ways that that can be managed, or how we can look after ourselves in a way that gives us the coping mechanisms to deal with the anxiety.
Yes, exhaustion and tiredness. I was thinking also, though, around personality types, because you mentioned introversion earlier on, and it is well known, for example, that someone with the personality type of having some introversion will find other people exhausting. And so, and I know that in the main, the science tries to suggest that if we're a personality type, then it's almost a genetic thing. So the Myers-Briggs personality typing, where introvert, extrovert, sensing and judging are all part of that. So that suggests if we're something, we stay in that. But as with all science, I think there are some exceptions. So I know some people don't necessarily agree. But I suppose what that brings me back to is, again, the need for us to be kind and compassionate with ourselves in a way that we, if we're tired, we check out. We do something that we need to not be tired, and that we try as much as possible not to justify it to others. So to find ways that we can get out without exhausting ourselves further. You know, that situation where someone says, oh, but it's only 11 in the morning. What do you mean you're tired? Oh, I'm too tired. So yes, to feel okay in ourselves that we're tired can often mean that we can deal with it sort of more easily in a way. So getting into, and I think it's down to having some early successes. Once we start to be successful in taking ourselves out of things, then it gets easier, really, I think.
Right.
But yes, if we're anxious, then we will get tired, and so ultimately, yeah, to bring us back to what can we understand about the anxiety, and yeah. Can we find out the source of it, or if not, can we manage it in a different way, or is knowing that we're tired and we need a break enough? Is that it? Is that all we need to do? Is that all we need to do? Not all we need to do, but that's the best we can do, and that's good.
Okay. So self-acceptance.
Self-acceptance, yes. Yeah, I think when we're less stressed with ourselves, we often find better ways of doing things anyway. But it's not easy to be less stressed with ourselves.
No.
Yeah.
Are there different forms of social anxiety? For instance, would some people perhaps find it easier to, oh, I don't know. Is there a difference between fearing intimacy and fearing social interaction? I'm thinking of, people who maybe shun time with family or close friends, or people who they have a deeper connection with, but are absolutely fine to go to a party, work the room, have 5 minutes with each person. Because I feel like I know people like that who are very, would seem to be quite gregarious, but actually in their personal relationships would be very guarded.
that the games people play comes to mind. A psychologist called Byrne wrote a book about the games people play. So how we can play the parent game, or the therapy game, or the friend game, that we put ourselves into roles. We kind of we have little job descriptions in our heads, in a way, and then we can operate on those, which can I guess it can reduce anxiety.
Have they been imposed on us, or have we given ourselves those roles?
Probably a bit of both. Sometimes it's imposed. It can be from family or society, or from law or religion, or we can have adopted it. We can have decided what it is. Usually in couples therapy, what we are really dealing with is two different job descriptions that don't really match.
Right.
That the husband, or the male partner, or the female partner, and the wife, that they have different job descriptions in mind. And actually with same-sex couples, that can be that there's two that they both have the same job description, and so both try to do the same jobs. So so you will get people at parties that may be very gregarious, then afterwards be quite different. From your perspective, your question there is I'm sensing that maybe you would like, or you are someone who's the same in most situations, that there's a sort of a genuineness that you approach situations with.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit then. You broke up, sorry.
I was wondering if what you were saying with regards to yourself is that maybe you like to approach all situations in a sort of a genuine way. It's not that
Genuine.
you won't think, right, this is a party, I'm going to be party Sarah, or
Party Sarah is a very interesting beast.
for another time, maybe.
No, I think I find it easier to have brief, fleeting intimacy than I do to have genuine closeness with people. I find I think I'm often better in a situation where I can go in, turn on the charm for a few minutes, and then, rather than with a small group of people who know me well. I sometimes find that quite overwhelming, threatening. I feel like they're sort of sucking the soul out of me. So I do have problems with close personal relationships. I would say I'm better flirting with the bus driver.
Yeah.
No bus driver springs to mind when I say that. I don't know why I said the bus driver. I don't even know the last time I caught a bus, but you know what I mean. Let's say the bartender. I'm better flirting with the bartender than I am having an actual conversation with someone who knows me well.
Yes. Yeah. Well, going back to this idea of sort of job descriptions, that we can operate on something for a while, that we know we can do something, and so you can do that. If you take that away, there may be an anxiety that can come from, well, what is the expectation here? And in our most personal relationships, there is a fluidity, isn't there? That there's a kind of an uncharted territory in a way. And I remember in some therapy training, someone said, well, of course, our relationships are all about what we can tolerate. Maybe it can be like that. How long you can tolerate, how close you can be, how much you can join in with the eating or the drinking, or to be empathic and connected. Yes, and people will be different in that. So your question originally was about different types of social anxiety that people might,
Yeah, because
it
I
might be
think
more connected.
there might be a perception that social anxiety is um, like a fear of meeting new people or a fear
Mm.
of walking into a party. But I was just wondering, can it also manifest itself as a fear of intimacy?
Mm. I think it's where you identify as an anxiety around interacting with others, um, and that yeah, it's quite possible to I was just wondering if Boris has a social anxiety, if he's using the guacamole. My mind went off there. That it's quite possible to be seen to be something by a lot of people, but actually, you know, to feel differently in other situations.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And also, you've spoken about introversion, and some people are quite happy with their own company, and it isn't necessarily a problem for them. But at what point do alarm bells go off? At what point do you think that your solitary ways are becoming problematic? Um, are there warning signs to look out for? Or is it not problem as long as you're happy? Is it not problematic? How does that work?
I always think if we have a thought or a question that comes to mind, that's always a really good starting point. That if we find ourselves thinking, oh, do I have enough friends? Then we should take ourselves really seriously with that. Um, Again, that's sort of the kindness or compassion, because if someone said to us, oh, I've been thinking maybe I should have more friends, you'd say, oh, really? Is that right? You think you might not have enough friends? And you go, well, how many friends should somebody have? Yeah, I think if a thought occurs to us, then it's really helpful to take that seriously. And also that we do know ourselves through our relationships with others. So I think it can be important to pay attention to when people give us feedback, that we might even invite it with some people, some friends. There might almost be a kind of I think some partners sometimes do that. They'll kind of say, well, will you tell me when I'm doing that thing? Oh, you mean that thing where you're boring four people in the corner of the party? That thing, yeah, I'll come and take you out of it. Yeah, don't worry. So we know ourselves through our relationships with others. So to pay attention, I guess, to what other people say. But as you say, it can sometimes be really quite painful to understand what somebody might mean based on what
Mm,
they're saying. But actually, we're given something that we find hard to do something with.
yeah.
So I think both of those, if we think about something ourselves, then that's worth exploring. And then, yeah, if we've got something that people have said to us, that maybe we can think about it further or talk to others about it, to see what they say.
Right.
Yeah,
And
I
I
think.
suppose if someone, I mean, you said before about personality, personality types not necessarily being set in stone.
Mm,
Um, so if someone, for instance, had always been quite engaged and sociable, and you notice them start to withdraw
mm.
more and more, that could, on the one hand, be problematic, or on the other hand, it could just be an evolution of their character. Is that possible? I mean, is it possible to become more introverted as you get older, or?
Yeah, well, we're always becoming, I suppose, that
Mhm.
we're always losing a few brain cells every second. So who's to say what we're becoming into, what we're coming into? But I suppose what I always say about that is the very best thing that we can ever do is we can point out the facts of what we see. So we say to someone, you used to go to the pub 4 times a week, but now you only go once. I'm wondering what's happening. And then the person might say, oh yeah, no, that's true. I used to go 4 times a week. Now I only go, yeah, but I don't like the people that are in there anymore, but actually I do feel a bit lonely. Oh, I should find a different pub. You know, it's a kind of, but I think if we just tell people what we see, what we observe, it's kind of this pure kind of information, and then people can think about it for themselves, really. I think that's the kindest thing that
Right.
we
Okay.
can do. But of course, we do tend to, there is a bit of a tendency for people to sort of leap further on, you know, so say, are you lonely? Whoa, why are you saying that? And it's because you've not been going to the pub so much. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I find that kind of observation from people who know me quite difficult. Yeah, as an example, and maybe this feeds into why it's easier to have brief conversations um, than intimate ones. But I mean, like the other day, a neighbour commented on something about my hair or something, and I was like, oh, don't look at me. And I hated the fact that, you know, and I've had that a lot before. You know, oh, you're wearing a new top. Oh, I don't want you to comment on it.
Mm.
So if someone said to me, you don't go to the pub anymore, I think I might hyperventilate. I don't know what I'd do with that. I'd just be like, oh my gosh, you know, someone's observing and judging and noticing. I find that quite scary.
Mm.
So I don't know where I was going with that, but just yeah, the idea of, you know, I can barely even manage someone to comment on a new top. So goodness knows what I'd do if they were commenting on my pub going habits.
Mm.
But
Yes.
yeah, I suppose, you know, you do need to listen to what people say.
Well, so yeah, there's often useful information in there, but it can be very difficult because people deliver. I mean, there's criticism, isn't there? People will say things in maybe not diplomatic ways or not quite get it right. Um, and I think that's the other thing, isn't it? That getting it right is something about being tuned in with people as well. So someone that knows you very well, if they say something to you like, Sarah, I've noticed that you used to text me 5 times a week, but you've only texted me once. Depending on the relationship you've got with them, then that's fine. But if it's someone that you're not certain who they are and what they're up to, why are you interested in me? Then that could be complicated.
Right.
Yeah. Is that, am I?
Yeah, no, that
Is
makes
that,
perfect sense. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, I guess at the moment we're not in a situation where everyone goes around commenting on everything that everyone else does. Although sometimes it feels like it's getting a bit like that.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yes,
Absolutely.
with social media, I think that's a danger because people comment on what they see, and that's becoming much more kind
Hmm.
of expected. So people have to put things on social media which they hope gives exactly the right information out.
Yeah,
A
you
lot of
do very much
pressure.
create and curate your
Yeah,
public image
yeah, a lot of
via social
pressure.
media. Definitely. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. And different incarnations of yourself for different platforms as well. You know, you might sort of have your professional self on LinkedIn, and then your, you know, holidaying self on Instagram, and then, you know, your sort of family or kids and sort of more personal things on Facebook.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I think that can be quite tricky as well, managing those different manifestations of yourself and how
mm,
you want to be projected.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything you're left with, or anything coming up?
No, I suppose it would be, I mean, how, I mean, anxiety isn't something that goes away necessarily, is it? Is it just something that you learn to live with? Not you personally, but people. Um,
Um, I think there's times when it's manageable, and
Mm-hmm.
times when maybe it feels unmanageable. I think that there's an inherent anxiety that comes with living, because from an existential point of view, we're thrown into the world, and then there's what are we here for?
Yeah.
So yes, I mean there's anxiety in a way about our meaning and our purpose for being here, and then as you were saying earlier, can be an anxiety around getting things right, or can be a whole range of things really. So
Yeah.
I think everybody has an anxiety. I think some people are better at actually having it in their awareness that there is anxiety there. The main thing is that you find a way where it feels comfortable, manageable, and enables you to have the life that you would like to have.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
But yes, for some people maybe it will go away. For some people it will arrive. I don't think there's sort of an easy way to answer that question.
All right. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
All right, super. Thank you, Sarah.